He didn't remember falling from the sky, but the cracked curvature of his helmet and the suspicious crunch in his ribs suggested he had done something spectacularly stupid at high altitude. The air was dry, humming with heat, and tasted faintly like burnt copper and regret. Captain Rian Holt blinked against the double sunlight baking the red sands, his HUD flickering its disapproval in orange warnings. Oxygen levels, low. Core temperature, high. Luck, expired. He tried to sit up. The suit protested. His spine protested louder. A small, indignant alarm beeped in his ear, possibly the last gasp of his emergency AI before giving up on him entirely. He slapped the side of his helmet. The screen went black. Either the power died, or the AI did the digital equivalent of flipping him off. Excellent, he muttered, his voice rasping like sandpaper in a blender. Stranded, alone, probably concussed, and insulted by my own gear. He shifted, wincing, and heard the faint hiss of a cracked oxygen seal. Definitely concussed. Or hallucinating. Maybe both. A shadow moved across the horizon, and for a moment, he hoped it was a hallucination. Hallucinations didn't loom. This one did. Tall, fluid, not quite human, definitely not human. Too many limbs. Too much grace. Something royal in the way it walked, like the universe owed it silence and bowed terrain. Hello, he croaked. The figure paused. Observed. No response. It just stared, head cocked at an angle that made his neck hurt in sympathy. I'm not food, Rian added quickly. At least, not premium cut. Still no response. The being knelt beside him, its face a mask of smooth obsidian and sapphire glimmers, features unreadable but eyes blazing with too much thought. A pair of sharp-tipped fingers traced the edge of his helmet, delicately, clinically, like inspecting a cracked teacup found in the sand. Then, without a word, it lifted him. Lifted. Rian might have weighed a modest 90 kilos in gear, but this stranger, alien, definitely alien, hoisted him with the same effort one might use to reposition a pillow. He flailed weakly. Whoa, hey, hi, consent is a thing. No response. He was guessing based on the posture, the silhouette, and an inexplicable instinct that she could absolutely kill him with a flick and maybe a sigh, slid him onto her back like a pack of groceries and took off across the dunes at a pace that could only be described as brisk death march. And Rian, as he bounced limply against the alien queen's spine, thought, well. I guess this is the part where I die. Again. But faster, When he awoke next, it was to the scent of burning, something. Not flesh. Something vaguely floral, like lavender dipped in motor oil. He opened one eye and found himself surrounded by glowing plants, pulsating fungus, and one particularly judgmental cactus that blinked. The cave was cool, shaded from the heat outside, and filled with faint mechanical whirring. It took him a moment to realize that the walls were breathing. Organic tech. Grown, not built. Every pulse of light in the stone synchronized with the rhythm of his own chest. Creepy, he whispered. Then louder, 10 out of 10 hospitality, though. The alien queen sat across the chamber, sharpening a spear that appeared to be made of bone and humming a tune that could either be a lullaby or a warning, depending on how you felt about minor chords. She didn't look at him, but one side of her crest flicked, a subtle acknowledgement. Hi again, Rian said, forcing himself upright and nearly blacking out. Thanks for not eating me. I know my protein ratio isn't great, but still. Points for manners. Silence. A glance. He gestured at the room. So, you live here? Cozy. Little murdery. I like what you've done with the ribcage motif. She rose in one elegant movement and crossed to him. He leaned back instinctively. Easy, he said. Not every day I get rescued by an alien warrior queen. Or, are you a queen? I'm guessing. Regal posture, mysterious vibe, incredible cheekbones. Her eyes narrowed. I'm talking too much, aren't I? A low, vibrating growl, not quite hostile, but definitely a reprimand. She pointed at his leg. Then at his mouth. Then at his head. It took him longer than he'd like to realize she was asking, are you injured, stupid, or both? Yes, he said. To all three. But I make excellent tea, and I can whistle like 6 Earth songs. She stared. Blinked once. Then turned away, returning to her spear with what he interpreted as barely concealed exasperation. Somehow, that reaction made him feel marginally less terrified. Progress. By the time his suit's self-repair system grudgingly reinitialized basic function, he had learned 3 things. 1. The Queen, he'd decided to call her Vel until corrected, had zero interest in communicating verbally. She preferred glances, gestures, and the occasional low snarl. It was like rooming with a predator who had taken a vow of semi-silence. 2. She had a thing about touch. When he tried to pat her shoulder in gratitude, she nearly dislocated his wrist. But later, when he tripped and fell face-first into a patch of thorny mold, she sighed, actually sighed, and helped clean him up with astonishing gentleness. 3. She didn't sleep much. And when she did, it was with one eye open and a weapon across her lap. Paranoid, he muttered one night, watching from his little corner nest of blankets and alien moss. She didn't answer. And probably right to be. Still nothing. But if you're planning to keep me around, maybe teach me how to not die in the sand. Like a surviving cartoon for idiots course. I promise to pay attention and not get eaten by anything larger than a house cat. A pause. Then, to his surprise, she tossed something his way. It landed with a wet splat. He picked it up. It was a lizard. Still twitching. Oh. Yay. Breakfast. She pointed at it. Then at his mouth. Then made a chewing motion. Right, Rian muttered, lifting the lizard with all the enthusiasm of a man offered a steaming bowl of regret. Bon appetit to me. Vel watched, unmoving, until he took the first bite. He gagged. She smirked. He pointed a trembling finger at her. That was revenge. That was absolutely revenge. She didn't disagree. And somehow, that made him trust her just a little more. Rian had never been a fan of caves. Too dark, too damp, and too many things that scuttled, hissed, or glowed ominously. The fact that this one breathed didn't help. Walls exhaled in slow pulses, as if the entire structure had a circulatory system, which, given the warm, rhythmic thumping he occasionally felt under his feet, was not out of the question. He was pacing now, half limping, trying to restore blood flow to legs that had grown stiff with disuse and alien humidity. Vel, still unbothered by his renaming her without permission, sat cross-legged on a high ledge, fletching an arrow from something that used to have too many eyes. She didn't speak. She rarely did. But her gaze tracked him like a lazy turret. You know, most hostesses would offer coffee, he said. Or tea. Or, at the very least, a not-dead lizard that doesn't taste like spicy rubber bands. No response. Just the slow peel of another feathered tendon across the arrow shaft. He plopped down on a moss-covered rock, which squelched suspiciously and then sighed. Okay, he muttered. You win. The furniture's alive. Everything here's alive. Even the air probably has an opinion. The rock grumbled beneath him. He leapt up, cursing. Vel raised one brow ridge, at least, he assumed it was a brow, and made a noise that could have passed for laughter if it hadn't ended in a chittering click. Right. Laugh it up, Space Empress, he muttered. One day, I'll build a chair that doesn't judge me. She dropped from the ledge, landing in that terrifyingly graceful predator way that suggested knees were optional and gravity was a toy. She tossed him a bundle. It hit him squarely in the chest. Oof. What is this? Fabric? Wait, is this clothes? He held up the strange garment, dark, ribbed, and faintly humming. Am I being dressed? Is this your way of saying my current outfit offends your royal sensibilities? Vel gestured for him to put it on. He narrowed his eyes. If this thing bites me, we're having words. No bite. Just a cold, slimy slither as the fabric slinked around him, adjusting automatically. The moment it sealed at the collar, the temperature in his suit dropped to a comfortable level, and his cracked rib was suddenly less vocal about its existence. Okay, wow, he said, twisting experimentally. I take it back. You have excellent taste in fashion/medical technology. This thing just gave my spine a high five. She nodded once and pointed toward the cave entrance. Then she walked out without waiting. Rian squinted at the exit. Sure. Let's take a nice stroll through Murder Desert. Outside, the heat struck like a slap, but a manageable one, thanks to the new suit. The sun had dipped low, casting cartoon in bruised purple and molten orange. The sand, for once, wasn't trying to boil his kneecaps. Vel moved swiftly, her posture more cautious than usual. She paused often to scan the terrain, her crest twitching like antennae. Rian followed, half limping, half stumbling, and tripping over exactly every third rock. Is this a field trip? He asked. Are we going to look at native wildlife? Please say no. The last wildlife tried to wear my face. She didn't answer, of course. But after an hour of hiking, she stopped at what looked like a heap of dead metal half buried in a dune. She knelt beside it, brushing away sand until glowing blue panels emerged. Organic circuitry pulsing faintly beneath fractured plates. Rian's eyebrows rose. That's a relay node. That's Earth tech. From the war. Vel looked at him, then back to the device. Okay, he said slowly. Now I'm interested. She pried a panel loose and motioned for him to come closer. When he did, he saw the damage, deep burns, crushed circuits, and something that looked like claw marks. Sabotaged, he guessed. She tapped the mark with a claw and nodded. Not yours, he said. Too dramatic. So, someone didn't want this working. This is how you found me, isn't it? This was scanning when my squad landed. She made a low affirmative sound. Damn, Rian muttered. Then someone knew we'd be coming. He stared at the broken relay, mind spinning. The mission had been simple: scout for resources, secure any alien tech, report back. But the drop zone data had been off. The storm had come early. And their comms had died instantly. And now, he was the only one alive. Well, he said. That's not terrifying at all. Vel stood suddenly, her head snapping to the west. What? He asked. What do you, oh? You heard something, didn't you? She grabbed his arm and pulled, hard. They tumbled behind the remains of the relay just as a shriek split the air. A moment later, a creature the size of a ground car sprinted across the ridge, 6 legs, iridescent armor, too many teeth, and a scream that made his molars itch. It sniffed the air. Snorted. Moved on. Rian exhaled. Oh good. It didn't see us. And I didn't pee myself. That's a win. Vel didn't let go of his arm until long after the creature had vanished. Her claws were still half extended. He looked at her face. Not fear, not quite. But tension. Deep set, unmoving, and old. He touched her hand gently. You okay? She pulled back like burned. Sorry, he said. Still working on boundaries. Alien customs and all that. Vel stood and signaled again. Back to the cave. Rian hesitated, looking out at the horizon. You don't want to leave this planet, do you? Even if we could. She looked at him. Something unreadable passed between them. Then she turned and walked. He followed. And behind them, in the spot where the relay had been hidden, the sand began to stir, just a little. As if something buried beneath had taken notice. It turned out the cave had levels. Plural. Rian discovered this the hard way, by accidentally falling through a soft patch of moss that turned out to be a camouflage trapdoor, or possibly a sentient plant playing a practical joke. Either way, he yelped, flailed, and landed in what appeared to be the bioluminescent digestive tract of a very large architectural creature. "Hey," he called upward, his voice echoing through glowing tendrils and moist, humming walls. "I didn't agree to spelunking. This is kidnapping adjacent." A rope, or something that resembled one, was dropped down moments later. Vel's face appeared at the top of the hole, unimpressed. "Oh good," Rian muttered. "The Queen herself, here to save the idiot. What an honor." He climbed. It was slippery. It made uncomfortable noises. Something licked his boot halfway up. By the time he reached the ledge, he was panting and covered in slime that smelled faintly of pepper and regret. Vel helped him over the edge with one hand and smacked the back of his head, gently, but firmly. "I was exploring," he said defensively. "Curiosity is the first step toward discovery, you know." She raised a brow. "And apparently also the first step into a giant digestive pit." She nodded. He wiped goo off his shoulder. "Do you ever talk? Or is this just going to be a life of aggressive eye contact and interpretive glaring?" She turned away. "That's not a no," he called after her. Later that evening, she took him deeper into the cave, the right way this time, using actual paths and non-sentient stairs. The temperature dropped slightly as they descended, and the walls became less stone and more metal, veined with blue light that pulsed in slow, steady rhythms. "Okay," Rian said. "Now we're in spaceship territory. Or underground command center. Or mad scientist's wine cellar. I'm open to options." Vel didn't reply. She led him to a room. Larger than the others, circular, and lined with consoles half swallowed by moss. In the center stood a translucent pod, humming quietly. Inside, a small figure, suspended in pale fluid. Still. Peaceful. He approached slowly. "Is that?" Vel nodded once. He leaned closer. "A child. Yours?" She didn't move. Didn't blink. But that silence carried weight. Rian exhaled. "You were a queen. Like, a real one. Royal blood, all that. And now you're exiled." Vel remained still. But her claws tightened slightly. "Okay," he said gently. "Not touching that topic yet." He turned to one of the consoles and wiped away years of dust and whatever alien equivalent of mold had grown over it. The screen flickered, spat a spark, and then lit up, language unknown, but some of the symbols had shared roots with old galactic trade tongues. Enough for basic understanding. Stasis integrity failing, he read slowly. Biocore degradation at 42%. You need power. Vel gestured at the ceiling. Toward the surface. Toward the broken relay. "Of course," Rian muttered. "Always the broken tech. Never the fully functional backup generator with a user-friendly interface." She handed him a data crystal. "Wait, you have the repair code?" A nod. "You've been trying to fix it alone. All this time?" Another nod. "Why didn't you just say that?" She gave him a look. "Okay, fine, that's on me." The next day began with a surprise. He rolled out of his nest expecting more training in survival, perhaps another lizard breakfast, or being yelled at in silent expressions. Instead, Vel handed him a spear. "Okay," he said, taking it. "We hunting?" Or is this for decoration? Because I once won a class award for most likely to spear himself accidentally. She led him into a clearing beyond the ridge, where a series of boulders had been set up in rough formation. Target practice, he asked. She gestured for him to throw. Rian eyed the nearest boulder. Right. No pressure. Just impressed the deadly alien queen with my spear-throwing prowess. He hurled the weapon. It wobbled. It whistled. It landed 6 feet short of the rock and stuck upright in the sand like a very confused umbrella. Vel tilted her head. It slipped. Rian protested. Gravity on this planet is judgmental. She retrieved the spear and demonstrated. With a flick of her arm, the weapon soared clean through the target, lodging in the second boulder behind it. He applauded slowly. Yep. That's very impressive. I, too, was once competent at something. Typing. I typed at 112 words per minute. So, you know, basically the same skill. She handed him the next spear. He sighed. Fine. But if I die via ricochet, tell my family I died doing something I hated. By midday, he could consistently hit his target, mostly. Vel seemed moderately pleased, which for her meant she didn't throw anything at him in frustration. They sat beneath a rocky overhang, sharing rehydrated fungi and something that tasted like alien honey. He watched the horizon, eyes narrowing. I've been thinking, he said. Whoever broke that relay didn't do it randomly. They knew what it was. Knew someone might try to fix it. She didn't react. And they might come back. Still no reaction. But her crest shifted slightly. He turned to her. You're not just hiding, are you? You're watching for them. Vel looked away. Who are they? He asked. The ones who took your throne. Her claws flexed, slow and silent. Okay, he said, voice gentler. Another time. They sat in silence for a while, until a sudden buzzing filled the air. Rian leapt to his feet, brandishing his spear. A glowing drone the size of a dinner plate zipped past, circled once, then hovered in front of Vel. Rian blinked. Friend of yours? She swatted it. It dodged. She swatted harder. The drone let out a panicked bloop, zipped behind Rian, and latched onto his back. He screamed. Vel laughed. Actually laughed. A full, rasping, breathless laugh that made her shoulders shake and her eyes glow just a little too brightly. Rian stood frozen. Okay. That's new. You do laugh. Good. I was starting to think your vocal cords had unionized and gone on strike. She waved him forward, still snickering, and the drone detached with a click. It hovered again, beeping softly. Then it projected a map. Rian's eyes widened. That's a patrol grid. Recent. Someone's scanning for energy spikes. Vel nodded once. Looks like your enemies are coming back. Vel looked at him, then at the spear in his hand. He sighed. Great. Training montage wasn't just for fun, was it? She smirked. Of course not. You never do anything just for fun. She handed him another spear. Let me guess, he muttered. We're going hunting. Vel nodded. And this time, he said, hefting the weapon, it's not for dinner. They found the Merc nest at dawn, if dawn could be defined as the hour when both suns reluctantly dragged themselves over the horizon and the sandbugs stopped screaming. Rian crouched behind a jagged ridge, squinting through the scope of a borrowed plasma rifle with all the confidence of a man holding a live squid. The weapon pulsed in his hands like it had its own nervous system and possibly opinions about how it should be held. I'm just saying, he whispered, maybe I should have started with a gun that doesn't hum at me. Vel didn't respond. She was already 15 meters ahead, flattened against the rock, every muscle tuned like a coiled spring. Even crouched, she looked regal. Dangerous. Slightly offended by her surroundings. She held up 2 fingers, then one, then clenched her fist. Cool, Rian whispered. That's probably a signal for, stay hidden and shut up. Or maybe, attack now and scream wildly. Honestly, it's a 50-50 shot. Then he saw the mercs. They shimmered across the ravine, crawling like liquid armor, low, serpentine things with iridescent scales that phased in and out of visibility. They moved in pulses, like bad ideas. Too many legs. Too many teeth. One of them looked directly at him, vanished, and reappeared a meter to the left. Rian ducked instinctively and nearly fell off the ledge. He hissed, "Nope. Nope to everything about that." Vel made a sharp gesture, "Wait." Then she vanished. Rian blinked. She does that too now? Great. She's got invisibility. I've got sarcasm and lower back pain. Below, the mercs began to hiss, shifting restlessly. Then one screeched and leapt to the side. Vel reappeared midair, driving a blade into its spine with a sound like crunching ice wrapped in tinfoil. Another merc lunged. She spun, parried, rolled. Rian watched for approximately 2 seconds before realizing, oh no. I'm the backup, He aimed the rifle, tried to remember which glyph meant fire, and which meant clean nozzle, then pulled the trigger with a silent prayer to any and all gods, including the god of not exploding. The gun kicked like a mule with jet thrusters. A bolt of blue-white plasma shot across the ravine and vaporized a rock 3 feet above the target's head. Okay, he muttered, adjusting. More down. Less up. Also maybe less me holding this. He fired again. Missed again. Hit something that immediately caught on fire and let out a startled meep. Vel, meanwhile, had dropped another merc and now had the last one pinned. Rian raised his rifle, lined up the shot, exhaled. The merc disappeared. He blinked. Oh come on. It reappeared behind him. He heard the hiss, turned, and saw too many teeth lunging toward his face. He screamed. Then Vel tackled it midair. They rolled in a blur of claws and snarls. Rian stumbled back, tripped over his own feet, and landed butt first on a jagged outcrop that beeped. Loudly. Oh no, he muttered. The outcrop unfolded into a tiny turret, extended a scanner, and asked cheerfully in Galactic Standard, "Would you like to initiate area clearing mode?" Absolutely not, he gasped. Area clearing mode initiated. Vel's head whipped around. The turret spun up with a whine. Rian dove sideways. Vel. Duck. Or whatever your species equivalent is. Too late. The turret opened fire, spraying stun pulses in all directions. Rian crawled behind a rock as blue lightning ricocheted off every surface. The merc got stunned. Vel got grazed. The turret, in its enthusiasm, took out a cactus that screamed like a kettle. Then it paused, hummed, and asked, "Would you like to leave a review?" Rian crawled to it and punched the shutoff glyph. 0 stars. Will not recommend. Vel stood slowly, smoke curling from her armor. She gave him a long, slow look. He raised his hands. Okay, in my defense, nope. No defense. That was bad. But I didn't die. Progress. She pointed to the smoldering cactus. It looked hostile. She gestured at the merc corpses. Then at her slightly singed side. Collateral damage, he offered. Accidental. But very character-building. She hissed something in her native tongue that his translator chip refused to decode. Probably for the best. They dragged the merc bodies back to the cave by nightfall. One of them twitched the entire way, until Vel poked it in just the right spot and it shut off like a faulty blender. Rian flopped down near the central fire pit, arms aching. So, just to clarify, did we need all three of those? Or were we showing off? Vel skinned one with clinical efficiency and began extracting the shimmer gland, a bioluminescent organ used in cloaking tech. Rian watched, fascinated and horrified. That's going in the repair system, right? Not in our dinner stew. Please say right. She didn't answer. She just tossed him the second merc and handed him a knife. Oh, he said. You're serious. He stared at the merc. It stared back, blankly. Probably dead. Hopefully dead. Okay. How hard can it be? 3 minutes later, he had sliced his glove, offended the gland, and somehow caused the body to emit a smell that could legally be classified as a hate crime. Vel confiscated the knife and shoved him gently aside. Fine, he muttered. I'll go reorganize the rations or something equally heroic. He sulked near the supply packs. One of them growled at him. Okay, who packed the carnivorous bag? Later, when the glands were processed and stored, and Vel had finally stopped glaring at him like he was a poorly trained pet, they sat in quiet. The pod in the lower chamber pulsed faintly. Your kid, Rian said softly. He or she, they're going to wake up someday and see all this. See what you've done. What you gave up. Vel's expression shifted. Not softer, exactly. But deeper. Layers behind the silence. They'll be lucky, he added. She looked at him. I mean, assuming they don't inherit your ability to silently judge people to death. That might be, socially limiting. One side of her crest twitched. Still, he said. They'll have stories. And if we survive long enough, maybe I'll get to tell them how their mother once saved a useless soldier from becoming lizard chow. Vel tilted her head. I'll embellish it a little, he promised. Make myself taller. Give myself cooler weapons. And definitely no screaming. She didn't disagree. They sat in the firelight, surrounded by trophies, broken tech, and too many unspoken things. Outside, the wind howled, dragging with it the scent of metal and war. Inside, for the moment, there was peace. Or something pretending very convincingly to be peace. And that, Rian figured, was close enough. The patrol ship announced itself with a deep, mechanical hum that made the bones in Rian's face vibrate and the cave's moss walls sneeze pollen in protest. He was halfway through pretending not to nap when Vel snapped to attention, one claw pressed to the air like she was listening to the wind complain. Rian sat up, blinking groggily. Tell me that's just local atmospheric interference and not something with guns and searchlights. Vel didn't need to answer. The low drone shifted into a thrumming crescendo, and seconds later a blue scan beam cut across the sky like a divine accusation. Rian rolled off his moss pile and scrambled for his boots, which, because of course, had once again been dragged halfway across the cave by the resident vine creature, Krut. Krut, buddy, Rian said, yanking them free. You've got to stop treating these like chew toys. They are barely shoes as it is. Let's not turn them into salad. Krut flopped sulkily. Vel grabbed a pack, slung it over her shoulder, and tossed another to Rian. She pointed up, then curled her fingers toward her chest, a motion he'd come to understand as we're going now, try not to die again. Right. Standard morning hike. With extra running and maybe some laser fire. Just how I like my cardio. They exited the cave through a narrow passage Rian hadn't noticed before, probably because it looked like a wall, moved like a wall, and may have actually been a wall that changed its mind. It led to a narrow fissure overlooking the valley. Below, the patrol ship hovered, sleek, triangular, and very much not from her side of the galaxy. That's Earth tech, Rian said quietly. Well, Earth design. Modified. That's not one of ours. Vel narrowed her eyes. Her crest flattened. Rian lifted the scope from his rifle. They're sweeping with sensor bursts. Looking for power signatures. Probably got wind of the shimmer glands we activated for the pod's cooling system. Vel signed quickly, sharp, efficient gestures that his brain mostly translated as, asterisk they're looking for us. Not just salvage. Us specifically, asterisk. Rian's stomach did a slow, suspicious cartwheel. So, good news, I'm officially important enough to be hunted. Bad news, I forgot to write a will, and I'm 90% sure you don't do funerals. Vel gestured again. This time, flank, distract, regroup. Classic two-point maneuver, he said. Very tactical. Very heroic. Very likely to get me tossed. She pointed at him, then toward a path leading east, narrow, thorny, and riddled with plants that hissed when touched. Yeah, Rian sighed. Of course that's my route. They split. Rian skidded down the slope, swatting away the grabby flora and ducking beneath vine clusters that smelled like expired cinnamon. His communicator buzzed, just a single pulse, Vel's signal, go loud. He pulled the small device from his belt, flipped the frequency to open loop, and pinged the nearest relay node with a fake distress call. This is Captain Rian Holt, stranded operative, requesting immediate extraction. Coordinates incoming. I am injured, alone, and wildly attractive. Please bring snacks. The ship shifted midair, angled toward him. Oh no, he whispered. They bought it. He dove behind a boulder just as a pair of scout drones zipped down, scanning aggressively. One buzzed so close to his face he could see his own confused reflection in its curved lens. Shoo, he whispered. I am not interesting. I'm a very dull human. I pay taxes and reheat leftovers. It beeped. He threw a rock. It beeped louder. Then Vel struck. She dropped from a ledge above like a thunderclap wrapped in claws and shadows. One drone exploded instantly. The other jerked upward, too late. Her tail whipped around, slicing through it with the casual confidence of someone who had murdered small machines before breakfast. Your timing is amazing, Rian panted. Did you practice that entrance? Vel grunted and pointed toward the ridgeline. A figure stood there now. Tall. Thin. Clad in dark armor that shimmered like oil in water. Not quite human. Not quite alien. Something in between. Friend of yours? Rian asked. Vel stiffened. The figure raised a hand, and dozens of similar figures phased into visibility. All clad in the same mirrored armor. All perfectly still. All staring. I was really hoping for a friendly misunderstanding, Rian muttered. One of the figures stepped forward. His helmet retracted, revealing a face that was equal parts handsome and unsettling, like someone had designed it for diplomacy but kept the knife just behind the smile. Well, he said in Galactic standard, voice like velvet over steel. There you are. Rian blinked. I don't like how he said that. Vel growled low in her throat. The man spread his hands. Vel Shareth of House Ornyx. I bring greetings from the Sovereign Combine. We've come to finalize unfinished matters. Vel took a step forward. Her armor flexed, her claws extended. Also, the man added, we want the human. Rian took a step back. What? Me? No. You don't want me. I'm not even fully certified in anything except first aid and space sarcasm. The man's smile widened. He holds the last combat record of the Fallen Strike team. Their route. Their encryption codes. You think we wouldn't notice the shimmer gland spike? You think we wouldn't find you eventually? Vel hissed. Now, he said. Hand him over, and I might let you live long enough to bury your child. Vel moved so fast that Rian barely registered it. One moment she was beside him. The next, she was halfway across the ravine, blade drawn, screaming like an empire falling. The combined soldiers opened fire. Rian dove. Plasma sizzled past his ears. He rolled behind cover, yelling, "Okay. This is officially not a drill." Vel tore through the front line like vengeance incarnate. Rian, still half panicked, activated the defense module Vel had jammed into his belt earlier, a round disc that popped open and generated a faint but effective energy shield around him. "Not dying today," he muttered. "At least not until I finish that novel I never started." He peeked over the rock. Vel had already dropped 3 soldiers. But more kept coming. "Okay," Rian said, heart pounding. "Time for a very bad plan." He scrambled through his pack, pulled out a merc gland, and activated its charge. The glow intensified. Then he chucked it into the heart of the battlefield. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was bright. Blinding. The soldiers screamed as their visors shorted out, stumbling backward. Vel didn't pause. She moved through the confusion, grabbed Rian by the collar, and vaulted them both into the crevice beyond. They tumbled. Slid. Landed hard. Rian groaned. "Okay. Still alive. Still handsome. Very bruised." Vel stood over him, breathing hard. "Yeah," he said. "You were right. Again." She helped him up. Above them, the ship roared in fury. Below them, the path ahead twisted into tunnels filled with bioluminescent roots and old, half-forgotten tech. And beside them, despite everything, Rian smiled. "I'm starting to think we make a great team." Vel didn't smile. But she didn't disagree. The tunnels were old. Old in the way that made Rian nervous. Not crumbling ancient, but still working ancient. He could hear the quiet hum beneath his boots, like the floor was remembering things. Bad things. Vel moved ahead with confidence, her crest faintly pulsing with alertness. Rian, on the other hand, had a half-charged plasma pistol, a backpack full of questionable snacks, and a consistent sense of dread that smelled faintly like burnt copper. "Can I just say," he whispered, ducking under a low arch, "this is the worst romantic getaway I've ever been on." Vel didn't turn. "That wasn't a no," he added quickly. They passed through a wide chamber lined with crystalline panels that flickered to life as they stepped through. Glyphs danced across the walls, alien, yet half familiar. Rian's translator implant chirped. Legacy interface detected. Parsing, welcome, administrator." "Oh, I like the sound of that," he said. Vel stopped. She turned and raised an eyebrow. "I mean, not that I'm demanding a crown or anything," he added. "Unless they have one in medium." He touched one of the glowing glyphs. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a dark corridor with walls that pulsed with light and panels of dormant machinery. Vel hesitated. Just slightly. Enough for Rian to notice. "That's new," he said. "You're worried." She shot him a glance that said don't be ridiculous, but it was too late. No, it's okay," he said, patting her arm. "I'm worried all the time. It's a healthy thing. It's practically a hobby now." They moved forward, past alcoves filled with strange devices, tubes of liquid stasis, coils of semi-organic wiring, and something that looked suspiciously like a very judgmental chair. Rian avoided that one. Eventually they came to a central platform. Above it hovered a console, holographic, rotating slowly like it knew it was being watched. Vel stepped forward and placed her claw on the console. "Identity confirmed," the system intoned in a calm, ancient voice. "Vel Shareth of House Ornyx. Exile status, active. Bloodline priority, 1. Welcome, Sovereign." Rian blinked. "Okay, that's new. You didn't mention you were still technically on the throne." Vel didn't look at him. The console pulsed. "Vital stasis compromised. Air integrity at 63%. Energy reserves depleted. Suggested course, initiate orbital relay reactivation. Right, Rian muttered. Back to the relay. Back to the people who want us very, very disassembled. Vel turned to him and handed him a shard of crystal, faintly glowing, keyed to her biosignature. Wait, he said. You want me to reactivate the relay? Alone? With this? She nodded. Oh no. No, no, no. I mean, yes, I'm flattered you trust me, but have you seen me in combat? I'm like a space turtle. With asthma. She pointed toward a panel. A map flared to life, showing a hidden path beneath the old war tunnels, one that bypassed the main valley and led to the relay. Well, he sighed. That's suspiciously convenient. The ground rumbled slightly. Okay, he added. And that's suspiciously ominous. Vel handed him a sidearm. Not just any sidearm, *Her's star. Sleek, dark, etched in old symbols. It felt wrong in his hand. Like borrowing someone's soul. He looked at her. You're not coming. She shook her head. Why? She tapped her temple, then pointed toward the console. You're staying to monitor the system. To stabilize the pod. You can't leave it. She nodded. He sighed. Fine. But if I die, I'm haunting this place. I'll become the first sarcastic space ghost. He paused. Also, he added, try not to die either. I mean, obviously. But also selfishly. I don't want to explain this to your kid one day while wearing a shirt that says, I lost your mom and all I got was this terrible sense of failure. Vel smirked. She pressed her forehead briefly to his, a gesture she'd never done before, and then stepped back. Rian swallowed whatever that feeling was. Right. Relay run. Easy. Probably. Wish me luck. She raised one claw in a lazy half-salute. He turned and left. The tunnels twisted and narrowed. At one point, he had to crawl through a vent that smelled like old ozone and hope. He emerged into a chamber full of semi-dormant drones, their eyes flickering with just enough power to make him uncomfortable. Hey guys, he said softly. Just passing through. No need to wake up and murder me. One of the drones beeped. He froze. Then it rolled over and went back to sleep. He tiptoed around it. By the time he reached the outer edge of the facility, the suns had shifted again, casting sharp shadows across the ruined relay tower. He could see the wreckage from here, blackened panels, broken spires, the faint shimmer of energy bleeding from the damaged core. And one figure standing guard. Not combine. Smaller. Hunched. Covered in tools. A droid. A very confused-looking droid wearing a bow tie and muttering to itself. Well, Rian said aloud. That's unexpected. The droid spun toward him, eyes glowing blue. Halt. Identify yourself, trespasser. Or prepare to be stabbed. Politely. Rian blinked. You're a protocol assassin droid. The droid straightened. CR. IX Model 11. Combat. Retrieval. Interrogation. Execution. And etiquette. I see you've heard of me. I have not, Rian said. But I love you already. The droid lowered its plasma needle slightly. You are not combine. Nope. Team not evil. Here to fix the relay. Cyrax tilted its head. You do not look like a qualified technician. I'm not, Rian said. But I've got enthusiasm and a sharp learning curve. The droid considered. Then handed him a glowing wrench. Do not shame this gift. I'll try not to. Together, they approached the relay core. Rian slipped in the crystal. Systems rebooted. The tower groaned and lit up like an angry god. The energy surged. Back in the cave, Vel stood over the console as the pod's vitals steadied. For the first time in years, the status light pulsed green. She exhaled. Far above them, in low orbit, something else awakened. A dormant ship. A signature. A scream. But for now, Rian stood beside his new murderbot friend, panting. "I didn't die," he said. CRX patted his shoulder with a cold claw. "Not yet, dear Captain. But give it time." The tower hissed and shuddered as energy coursed through its ancient veins, lighting up consoles and kicking dormant systems into a frenzy of confused beeping. Rian stood with one hand on the glowing crystal interface and the other on his hip, trying not to look as winded as he felt. "I think," he said, chest heaving, "that counts as a win." CRX, hovering nearby, emitted a polite clapping noise. "If I had hands, I'd be applauding. Instead, I've uploaded celebratory chimes to your personal comm device. You're welcome. My eardrums thank you in advance. Would you like the modestly triumphant tone or the hero entering slow motion one? Dealer's choice." The tower let out a final rumble and locked into place. Above them, a beam of light shot into the sky, thin, focused, and very likely visible to everyone within 100 kilometers. Rian stared at it. "So, that'll bring help, right?" CRX hummed. "Or attention. Help might be included." "Oh great. I've just turned on a giant cosmic flashlight while we're being hunted by a guy who looks like he drinks his own reflection." There was a crackle on the air. A familiar tone. Vel's signal. He tapped his comm. "Relays up. Pod status." A pause. Then her voice, low and steady, came through, stable. He exhaled. "Good. That's really good." CRX spun lazily. "We should leave." "Agreed. Can you lead me back the way we came? The tunnel with the vine that tried to lick me?" I mapped 14 alternative routes. Only 8 are considered moderately fatal. Sounds about right. They started back. For roughly 12 minutes, things were quiet. Peaceful, even. Then the sky screamed. It started with a ripple, like a heat wave but sharper, slicing through the clouds. A moment later, the horizon tore open. A ship dropped through, sleek and vast, dark as vacuum and trimmed in silver veins. It hovered silently above the ridge, casting a shadow the size of guilt. CRX clicked. Combined flagship. Model designation, Veil Piercer. Their command vessel. Why does everything they name sound like it's trying to kill me emotionally? The ship began to descend. From its underside, pods launched, 3, then 6, then a dozen. Each one shimmered in mid-air before disappearing into cloak mode. They saw the relay beam. Yup. They're coming for you. Yup. Rian sprinted. They reached the fissure that led back into the old tunnels, only to find the opening pulsing with interference. Static shimmered across the entrance, blocking it with a curtain of energy. "Well, that's rude," Rian said. "They locked us out of our own escape route. That's just poor sportsmanship." CRX scanned the field. "I can disable it. But I'll need to interface directly." "How long?" 5 minutes. Too long. There was a rustle above. The shimmer of armor. The smell of ozone and superiority. "They're here." CRX extended its weapon arms. "Shall I hold them off?" Rian hesitated. "You sure you're up for it?" The droid's optics pulsed blue. "I was built for dinner parties and war crimes. Let me be useful." "You really know how to sell yourself." CRX floated toward the blockade and plunged 2 limbs into the control panel. Sparks flew. The field flickered. Then the first enemy landed. It was fast. Too fast. Rian barely raised his weapon in time to deflect the blast. They exchanged fire, Rian's bolt hitting the ground, the soldiers grazing his arm. He yelped. "Okay," he muttered, ducking. "Now I'm warmed up." More soldiers dropped in. "Still warm," he shouted. One lunged at him. Rian rolled, grabbed a rock, and smashed it into the soldier's visor. It cracked. The figure stumbled. "Not exactly textbook," he gasped, "but effective." Cyrex shouted, "Keep them occupied." "Almost there." "Oh, sure. I'll just dance around and hope no one vaporizes me." Classic human strategy. The fight intensified. Blades, plasma, fists. At one point, Rian threw a backpack full of rations at a soldier's face. The explosion of dehydrated fungi was oddly satisfying. Then a voice boomed across the ridge. "Captain Holt." He turned. The Combine commander stood there, untouched, calm, and very smug. "We meet again." Rian wiped blood off his brow. "Can we skip the villain speech this time? I've got cardio limitations." "You've delayed the inevitable." "You say that like it's a bad thing." "You've given her hope." "Well," Rian said, grinning through the pain, "I'm a very hopeful guy." The commander raised his hand. Cyrex finished its hack. The barrier fell. "Now," the droid yelled. Rian dove through, rolling to safety. Cyrex followed, its chassis sparking. "We need to regroup," Rian said. Cyrex scanned itself. "I am operating at 41%. Shall I play motivational music?" "Only if it's dramatic and contains violins." They vanished into the tunnel as the Combine regrouped. Vel stood in the stasis chamber, watching the pod. The vitals were holding, but the ship above made her claws twitch. When the door slid open, she turned, already moving toward the entrance, weapon in hand. Then she paused. Rian limped in, covered in dirt and blood and probably several types of regret. Cyrex followed, half smoldering. "We brought company," Rian said. "Big, dramatic, well-funded company." Vel tilted her head. "They want me. Still. And they're not going away this time." He looked at the pod. "Time to stop hiding." Vel's eyes narrowed. "I mean it," he said. "You've spent too long waiting. They want a fight. Let's give them one. Let's show them what a queen in exile looks like when she gets mad." Vel stepped forward. He handed her the sidearm back. She took it, holstered it, then placed a clawed hand on his shoulder. "You're with me now," he said. She nodded. Cyrex word. Requesting permission to also be included in this moment. Vel smirked. Rian grinned. "Yeah, you're in too." Above, the combined ship shifted, readying for deployment. Below, in the cave, an exiled queen, a sarcastic soldier, and a damaged etiquette assassin droid began preparing for war. And in the pod, the child stirred, just a little. The cave didn't tremble so much as grumble, a low, deep, ancient sound, like the world itself had just remembered it left the oven on. Dust sifted down from the ceiling, and somewhere behind the walls, something hissed with mechanical annoyance. Rian leaned against the console with one hand and tried not to wince as Vel wrapped a bandage around his side. It was her fourth attempt. He kept squirming. She kept growling. Cyrex kept narrating. "Medical update," the droid said brightly. "Captain Holt's injuries are superficial, his pain tolerance is theatrical, and his spleen is probably fine." "I've told you 100 times," Rian muttered, "my spleen is sensitive. It doesn't like being judged. Noted for the autopsy." Vel gave the bandage a final tug that was definitely a warning. Rian sucked in air through his teeth. Thanks, he said. I mean it. For everything. Vel looked at him. Said nothing. But she nodded. Outside, the Combine had started deploying heavy equipment, signal jammers, anti-air turrets, and something that looked like a giant metallic mushroom with commitment issues. Rian watched them through a narrow viewport carved into the cave wall. So, he said. They're not just here for me. Vel turned her gaze to the ceiling. The pod. Her heir. They know, Rian said softly. They want the bloodline erased. If your kid survives, the claim to the throne lives on. Even if they have to wait a generation. Vel didn't nod. She didn't need to. Syrax hovered in. My suggestion remains unchanged, explode everything, make a dramatic speech, and ride off into the dust cloud like legends. I'm not writing anything, Rian said. Every time I try, I fall off or it bites me. Vel tapped a glyph on the console. A section of the wall retracted, revealing a chamber Rian hadn't seen before, lined with dormant tech, crates, and what looked like several extremely large, extremely illegal weapons. Okay, Rian said. That changes things. Vel stepped in, grabbed a rifle taller than Rian's torso, and handed him a smaller, sleeker model with dual settings, stun and smite. I love it, he whispered. It looks like it hates bureaucracy. Vel handed another weapon to CRX, who squealed with glee. Oh, it's been centuries since I held a warcaster. Do you mind if I name it? I'm thinking, Clementine. Sure, Rian said. Long as Clementine aims away from me. They emerged from the cave at dawn. Real dawn this time, both suns rising slow and solemn, like they understood what was about to happen. The Combine troops turned toward them in perfect formation. The commander stepped forward, immaculate as ever. Vel Shareth, he said, voice sharp and smooth, you should have stayed buried. She didn't answer. Just raised her weapon. Rian stepped beside her. Just FYI, I am completely okay with dramatic standoffs, but I don't technically know how to fire this properly. Vel clicked a switch on his rifle. He looked down. Oh. That makes more sense. Syrax hovered above them, arms glowing. My body is ready. The commander sighed. You would raise a war for one soldier and a child that hasn't even breathed? Vel finally spoke. Just one word. Her voice was low, but it cut the silence clean in half. Mine. And then the shooting started. It wasn't a battle. Not exactly. It was more like a brawl between physics and very angry intentions. The valley lit up with plasma and kinetic blasts. Syrax spun like a vengeful chandelier, blasting soldiers out of cover and offering sarcastic commentary. Target neutralized. Target judged. Target regretted life choices. Rian stuck close to Vel, covering flanks, taking shots when he could, ducking when he couldn't. You know, he shouted, this would have been a great time for backup from my people. Vel ducked a beam and hurled a pulse grenade. Rian peeked over the blast cloud. 3 soldiers down. 1 limping. He grinned. Okay, we're doing this. Then he got punched. Hard. He flew backward into a rock, his vision swimming. A soldier advanced, weapon raised. And then Vel was there. She moved like a storm, precise, brutal, elegant. 1 swipe knocked the gun away. The second broke the soldier's arm. The third was, less polite. Rian blinked up at her. You're terrifying. And I say that with love. She helped him up. He wobbled. She steadied him. The battlefield quieted. Only the commander remained. He stood alone, his troops down or fleeing, his armor scorched. He drew a blade. So this is how it ends, he said. Rian, wheezing, lifted his rifle. You say that like it's a surprise. The commander lunged. Vel met him mid-stride. They clashed, blades against claws, speed against fury. The fight was fast, brutal, and beautiful. Rian couldn't tell who had the upper hand. Until Vel slipped under the final swing and drove her blade up through the commander's chest. He gasped. Stared at her. Then crumpled. It was over. 2 days later, Rian sat outside the cave, legs crossed, polishing the same rifle he'd never really learned to use properly. The valley was quiet. The ship above was gone, crashed, disabled, or dragged back into orbit by forces unknown. He didn't ask. Vel emerged, carrying the now active stasis pod in her arms. The child inside breathed. Alive. Hey, little one, Rian whispered. You've got no idea how lucky you are. Syrax hovered nearby, playing a lullaby on internal speakers. I composed this myself. It's an E-flat war minor. Vel set the pod down. She sat beside Rian, eyes scanning the horizon. So, he said, what now? She didn't answer right away. Then, a slow gesture toward the stars. Right, Rian said. Start over. Rebuild. Maybe teach your kid not to stab people without paperwork. Vel looked at him. He looked at her. You still claiming me? He asked, trying not to smile. She nodded. He sighed. Guess I'm not going back to Earth then. She shrugged. He chuckled. Yeah, okay. Not like I had rent paid anyway. He leaned back, looked up at the sky. It was bigger now. Somehow. Or maybe he was just smaller. In a better way. I'm yours too, he said softly. Vel didn't reply. But she didn't need to. Not anymore. Behind them, the pod pulsed gently. Ahead of them, the world waited, still dangerous, still unknown. But they weren't running anymore. They were living. Together. And for the first time in a long time, Rian Holt wasn't lost. He was home.